Welcome to HMS Cavalier, one of the last surviving British World War II destroyers. I'm Dan Snow.
I'm Richard Cutland from World of Warships. HMS Cavalier was once named the fastest ship in the fleet.
That's right, and she's had a storied career from the frigid Arctic of the Murmansk Run to the steamy seas of the Far East. And today we'll be exploring the ship in VR.
So let's get started. Click the button to come aboard.
Okay, here we go, Richard. Down in the very bottom of the ship here, the engine room. This is where the action happens. Steam created there, drives the turbines, drives the propellers, pushing this mighty 2,500-ton vessel across the surface of the waves.
And she was a fast old vessel down as well, wasn't she? Capable in excess of 33 knots, which is going some for any ship.
Yeah, but the guys down here, I mean, they created that speed, they made that happen, but it was a dangerous job. They're behind watertight compartments, they're right down, look at these ladders, very narrow, confined spaces. You're not getting out. If a torpedo comes to the side or a bomb comes to the deck, you're going to struggle to escape. And lots of these stokers down here paid the ultimate price. Look at HMS Keith in 1940 off Dunkirk. Bomb came down the smokestack, blew up in the engine room, ship broke apart, and there were heavy casualties.
Like you say, they were called stokers down here, and I found that quite odd, because in my mind, stokers were the guys that were shoveling coal into a furnace, but of course down here it was all about oil and steam.
So it was. There's the steam, there's the boilers, steam comes out there. You measure your steam and your temperature and your pressure on these dials. I love these dials, they're so resonant of World War II, they're great. This is interesting up here, isn't it? Because Samuel White and Company, Cowes in the Isle of Wight, IOW, that's where the ship was built in 1944. And that's weird for the modern standpoint, because nowadays Cowes is a little sort of seaside town, and the idea they were making major naval assets, well, that really shows the extent to which the country was having to mobilise, and every town, every port was playing its part.
And beneath all of these gauges, we've got two telegraphs, but perhaps more importantly, on either side of us, we've also got another two telegraphs, but these were directly linked to the wheelhouse. So the controls, they would make the command decisions up there, and they'd be replicated down here, so they knew what to do, exactly.
And they had no warning. Imagine they were going ahead, full steam ahead, and suddenly it was like full astern. You think, oh my goodness, something bad is going on.
A couple of huge great wheels down here, one green, one red. These are the throttle controls.
Replicated, one for each engine, I take it, yeah.
And another one I really like over here, there's these brass boxes that show the amount of revolutions that each propeller took.
I love that down here. Look how big it is. That just gives you an impression of how noisy it was down here. It must have been like being in a washing machine, hot and damp and noisy and confusing, because that's not how you communicate with people. If you did want to talk to the bridge, pick up the phone, go into this little soundproof cubby hole, and try and have a word with the bridge. But it would have been an intense experience being down here. The bridge would have been icy cold, down here it would have been boiling. So I think it's underwear only, plus overalls over the top, but of course proper boots and steel toes and non-slip soles, because you don't want to be rocking around, you don't want to be falling into the machinery.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff down there that you could injure yourself on. Should we go and have a look at those turbines?
Let's do it.
So up here, Dan, for me, this is the beating heart of the ship. These two huge Parsons steam turbines.
They're massive, aren't they? They take up almost the whole width of the vessel, don't they?
Now combined, they could produce up to 40,000 horsepower.
That is around about 4,000 times as powerful as a standard family car in the 1940s.
And they were linked to the shafts and the propellers of Cavalier in the gear room, which is just down there behind you. Now, if we talk about the propellers on Cavalier, they were absolutely huge, 10 foot in diameter, made of solid bronze, so incredibly heavy, and could turn at 300 revs per minute.
Okay, here we go, Richard. Down in the very bottom of the ship here, the engine room. This is where the action happens. Steam created there, drives the turbines, drives the propellers, pushing this mighty 2,500 ton vessel across the surface of the waves.
And she was a fast old vessel down as well, wasn't she? Capable in excess of 33 knots, which is going some for any ship.
Yeah, but the guys down here, I mean, they created that speed, they made that happen, but it was a dangerous job. They're behind watertight compartments, they're right down. Look at these ladders, very narrow, confined spaces. You're not getting out. If a torpedo comes to the side or a bomb comes to the deck, you're going to struggle to escape. And lots of these stokers down here paid the ultimate price. Look at HMS Keith in 19... So here we are. I mean, I love, but this is the bridge. This is the brains of the ship. This is where the ship would have been fought from and controlled from. Magic, isn't it?
And what a great field of view. I mean, you can see absolutely everything.
Yeah, Richard, that's because there's no roof and there's no walls. I mean, it's nuts, isn't it? It's an open bridge. I mean, this harks back to a bygone era when actually the most important thing for the captain and the officers of the watch was total visibility, keeping an eye on the tactical situation that the ship was in, you know, before radar, before we were able to look beyond the horizon.
And Cavalier was the last of the Royal Navy ships to maintain this open bridge configuration. So, yeah, you're right. Of course, it had its drawbacks as well. It
would have been absolutely miserable up here in a massive Arctic gale. Those conditions in early '45 when Cavalier went on to escort the returning Arctic convoy, it must have been unimaginable. Spray coming up here. It was ungentlemanly. It was considered ungentlemanly for the officer of the watch ever to complain. They had to be up here in all weathers, through the night, everything. He wasn't allowed to go anywhere. In fact, there's a urinal back there, so he can go and relieve himself without leaving the bridge. So his binoculars would have been in here, this fantastic little box there, and there would have been two members of the crew at all times on lookout, because Second World War there were still lots of accidents, navigational errors, collisions. So, you know, keeping an eye out was still a big part of the job.
Yeah, as well as keeping an eye, maintaining all the instrumentation up here. A lot of instrumentation we see around here, but we have to appreciate that some of this was the 1957 refit, so it wasn't here during World War II.
But this was here during World War II. We got
that was definitely there.
Gyro-stabilised compass and a binnacle, so you know where you're going. You can set a course from up here, make course changes, but you'll notice no steering wheel, no helm. Why not? Because these are speaking trumpets. You'd shout down below and you'd give instructions to the helmsman who was below. So that means the helmsman cannot see where the ship's going. So it just shows the trust that existed in those days. You trusted your senior officers. You knew they weren't going to get you into trouble, or you hoped they wouldn't. And so, yeah, you gave controls starboard and port from up here.
And a nice little brass plaque on there as well, Dan, that shows that the speed of a ship was measured in revs.
Absolutely, yeah, because they didn't have the sort of gear that we've got nowadays for measuring speed through water. And now, it was miserable up here. You would have been absolutely freezing on the Arctic convoys, but they did sort of try and forestall that a little bit by underneath these wooden slats. They had pipes filled with steam. So it was they were pretty hot, and they tried to stop the deck icing up. But I mean, that would have been small comfort, wouldn't it?
It makes you wonder how effective it was. So as far as the crew are concerned up here, I mean, at the moment, the only chair that I can see is the captain's chair. So the captain was the only guy that could actually sit down. Everybody else had to stand up. And the captain was up here during World War II, during accident stations.
Yeah, he had to fight the ship from up here. He would have had a fantastic view. Dangerous business being a destroyer captain, because incoming shells, bombs, shrapnel, a lot of destroyer captains killed, mortally wounded, injured during those battles of World War II.
Which you can see why they have to split the hierarchy up, so you can't have all of your control people up here on the bridge at any one time, in case something happens to them, of course.
Absolutely right, much safer to have them downstairs.
But his position up here, only during World War II. Then we had the operations room, which is directly beneath us, so obviously when the operations room was built, then he went downstairs, much safer environment, and to be fair with you, a lot more efficient from controlling the ship down there.
I think we should go to a safer environment as well.
Safer, it's pretty chilly warmer environment.
So here we are. I mean, I love, but this is the bridge. This is the brains of the ship. This is where the ship would have been fought from and controlled from. Magic, isn't it?
And what a great field of view. I mean, you can see absolutely everything.
Yeah, Richard, that's because there's no roof and there's no walls. I mean, it's nuts, isn't it? It's an open bridge. I mean, this harks back to a bygone era when actually the most important thing for the captain and the officers of the watch was total visibility, keeping an eye on the tactical situation that the ship was in, you know, before radar and before we were able to look beyond the horizon.
And Cavalier was the last of the Royal Navy ships to maintain this open bridge configuration. So, yeah, you're right. Of course, it had its drawbacks as well.
It would have been absolutely miserable up here in a massive Arctic gale. Those conditions in early '45 when Cavalier went on to escort the returning Arctic convoy, it must have been unimaginable. Spray coming up here. It was ungentlemanly. It was considered ungentlemanly for the officer of the watch ever to complain. They had to be up here in all weathers, through the night, everything. He wasn't allowed to go anywhere. In fact, there's a urinal back there, so he can go and relieve himself without leaving the bridge. So it's been palatial captain's cabin. It's a naval tradition. The captains do get a bit of luxury and a bit of personal space here. A commodity in short supply on HMS Cavalier or on any destroyer. Look at that, nice wood finish, little desk, lamp over there. But this speaking trumpet is important because this shows that there's no downtime for the captain. He can be in here snoozing, but when something happens, he's got to respond. There's no one else, you know, can make the big decisions. So if something did happen, he would run up to the bridge if it was World War II, but if it was after the war, if it was in the Cold War, he might just go to the operations room. That was where the heart of the ship was, and it's not too long a commute. Check this out over here, not too bad. Just through here, you have the operations room. This is where the information is flooding in, and this is where the decisions that the captain and the senior officers make can then be dispersed all over the ship. Hey Richard, how are you doing?
Hey Dan, how are you? Welcome to the operations room.
Thank you very much. Great in here, isn't it?
It's absolutely fantastic. One thing we have to remember that this particular room was post 1957, so the refit during the war, it would have been a lot smaller and called the Operations Information Office.
But you know, it's still a place, a sort of nerve centre, isn't it? I mean, what I love about it is this is a sort of primitive sort of surface. You know, people have now digital surface devices, but this is a primitive surface because you'd plot everything on here, friendly assets, enemy assets, and then you could move it along like this. So it's a sort of the rolling picture is maintained. It's very dynamic, and there's information everywhere, isn't there? There's radar. There's all sorts of other plots you can make. On this particular screen, someone would have to learn how to write backwards. They'd go behind here and they'd write backwards so the rest of the crew in this room could understand what was going on. Missile zones, safe lanes, things like that. It is just teeming with information.
Like you say, information, and that's a critical thing up there. Just behind me, we've got another plotting table there, and above me, you can see there's an absolute plethora of means of communication for every part of Cavalier, especially over on there. The most important part of that stage was the bridge, so the communication with the bridge. So it just shows you how critical this particular room was.
Amazing. You could control everything from in here, couldn't you? Fire control, the ship's response mechanisms, engine room, steering. Actually, speaking of communication, check this out. This is the coding office, one of the most top secret areas, probably the most top secret area on the ship, where the information from outside, from the Admiralty, from political authorities, even intercepted enemy information could be decoded in there. Very few people were allowed to enter that room. It's exciting in there.
And if you walk around here, we can see it's all about navigation back here. Navigation, of course, was absolutely critical. And again, we can't forget, during World War II, navigation was all about really the skill of the guy who was the navigator. So this is when we would find the navigations officer, plotting movement of submarines on there, and of course the actual reacting to the tactical threat. So making sure the ship was positioned in the correct place at
making
war
sure
times.
the ship didn't hit the green stuff or the yellow stuff. That's the thing you got. I mean, these guys were using celestial navigation, no GPS. They were using good old-fashioned. I mean, look how old that makes you feel seeing that. I learned how to navigate with one of those.
Just showing your age there, Dan.
I'm showing my age. It's depressing. Right, let's go and this is a great room. Come and check this out. the ASDIC room. This is ASDIC is sonar. At the beginning of the war, ships like this did not have any radar, they hadn't any sonar. They were basically ill prepared for the U-boat, the submarine threat. By the end of the war, they had this piece of kit, sonar. You could fire a sonic pulse, hit an underwater object, it would come back. That allowed you to plot it on there. You could then drop the depth charges off the back and destroy those enemy submarines. And by the end of the war, the Battle of the Atlantic had been won decisively by the Allies because of using machines like this, like radar, and it gave the German submarines a very hard time. Indeed, by the end of the war, it's extremely dangerous to be a German submariner.
It just shows for us, doesn't it, how we've taken our tour around Cavalier, how absolutely, what a game changer all this technical equipment was.
I mean, it was literally a game changer. It was decisive. At the beginning of the war, ships like this were the prey. By the end of the war, ships like this were the super predators. The palatial captain's cabin. It's a naval tradition. The captains do get a bit of luxury and a bit of personal space here. A commodity in short supply on HMS Cavalier or on any destroyer. Look at that, nice wood finish, little desk, lamp over there. But this speaking trumpet is important because this palatial captain's cabin. It's a naval tradition. The captains do get a bit of luxury and a bit of personal space here. A commodity in short supply on HMS Cavalier or on any destroyer. Look at that, nice wood finish, little desk, lamp over there. But this speaking trumpet is important because this shows that there's no downtime for the captain. He can be in here snoozing, but when something happens, he's got to respond. There's no one else, can make the This is the transmission station. This is where you fire the guns from, basically. It's the brains behind those guns, the brawn of the guns. Feels a bit like a tank, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing.
Quite excited by this. I mean, in a tank, we've got a ballistic computer. Modern tanks have obviously got computers inbuilt to work out all the information that you need for any projectile to achieve a hit on target. So the ballistic calculations, the wind, the lead angles, the range, etc., all needs to go into a computer. And this basically was what all of this room did. Now, of course, none of this was here during the war. This is all retrofitted from 1957 for the Far Eastern Fleet. So unfortunately, they didn't have any of this back during the war.
But they had similar things doing similar jobs, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can see there that it's all mechanical as well, which is quite fascinating. This particular unit we've got on there is the Admiralty Fire Control Box.
Have a look in here.
And this is, I mean, what a piece of engineering this is.
That is a thing of that is like a national treasure.
And you just imagine how much there is to go wrong in there.
But they're measuring range to the enemy ship, they're measuring sea conditions, wind speed, anything you can measure.
And obviously the position of the ship as well. I mean, because we can't forget that a ship will be bouncing up and down all over the place at some stages. So to achieve that hit on target, you have to have a lot of equipment and a lot of help.
That is a magnificent piece of mechanical computation there, isn't it? It's extraordinary.
And most of all, it's the crew was saying that they're very impressed that it's got a clock on there.
It's got a clock. Basically, it's just a really complex clock.
Incredibly useful. And I'm moving over to this side. So if we've got the sort of calculator and the computer over there that's doing all those ballistic calculations, obviously what's critically important is the direction and also the range information to the target.
And this traverses the guns, does it? I mean, you can control those 4.5-inch guns.
They can control
sets, 1, 2, 3,
all of those guns, either 1, 2, or 3. So it was possible, obviously, to fire one at a time, or we could actually do a salvo and fire all 3 guns at once.
It's weird to think, isn't it, that the guns are controlled from deep down in the bowels of the ship. and using science and computation to get the
Yeah, a lot
aim
of
right.
guys down there as well. I mean, you've got 3 on each one of these stations, and also a guy stood behind them, overall control of everything. So there's a lot of crew down there. Interestingly as well, Dan, we've got a nice big foot firing pedal down here on the floor. It made me chuckle the first time I saw that, because we've got a very similar thing in a tank, a foot firing pedal, but that's for a mechanical linkage in case everything else breaks down. This was a bit different. This was used so that the actual guns could train on after all of these calculations were done. Everything was fed into the computers, all fed up to the gun information, and once the gun was locked on target, it would actually fire the gun. So, we're talking about a few seconds here, so hopefully achieving that strike on target.
This is the transmission station. This is where you fire the guns from, basically. It's the brains behind those guns, the brawn of the guns. Feels a bit like a tank, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing.
Quite excited by this. I mean, in a tank, we've got a ballistic computer. Modern tanks have obviously got computers inbuilt to work out all the information that you need for any projectiles to achieve a hit on target. So the ballistic calculations, the wind, the lead angles, the range, etc., all needs to go into a computer. And this basically was what all of this room did. Now, of course, none of this was here during the war. This is all retrofitted from 1957 for the Far Eastern Fleet. So unfortunately, they didn't have any of this back during the war.
But they had similar things doing similar jobs, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can see there that it's all mechanical as well, which is quite fascinating. This particular unit we've got on there is the Admiralty Fire Control Box.
Should we have a look in here?
And this is, I mean, what a piece of engineering this is.
That is a thing of that is like a national treasure.
And you just imagine how much there is to go wrong in there.
But they're measuring range to the enemy ship, they're measuring sea conditions, wind speed, anything you can measure.
And obviously the position of the ship as well. I mean, because we can't forget that a ship will be bouncing up and down all over the place at some stages. So to achieve that hit on target, you have to have a lot of equipment and a lot of help.
That is a magnificent piece of mechanical computation there, isn't it? It's extraordinary.
And most of all, it's the crew was saying that they're very impressed that it's got a clock on there.
This is a gun. It's got a range of 9.5 miles maximum.
Wow.
And which is quite a range.
Quite a distance,
yeah. And when the gun's in action, we folded the guardrails halfway down so that when the ship rolled, the barrel never hit the guardrails. So it's, quite a... And then the shells came out of that door there from the hoist. They passed through a hole in that door.
Oh yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
And the guys would bring them round here. That door there, they had ready use ammunition there, so that if you were into action before they were able to bring some more ammunition up, it was already on the gun.
Something ready to go immediately.
Yeah. And then in here, the shells were brought in here. The loader stood here, and the guys bringing these over, which were quite heavy, they're full of cordite. He threw them on there. The shell was thrown on here and timed. That was brought up and thrown on there ahead in front of there. Hit the lever, the tray would go over, and this ram would automatically push the shell in there. The tray would come back. The gun fired, and all this bit here, which weighs about 800 weight, recoiled back to about here. The empty cordite case was ejected, hit the net, and fell to the ground. Now these guys are running around with these very heavy shells in their hands, and they've got a dozen of these rolling around on the deck, which could be quite dangerous.
Now, so I thought there'd been some sort of, catcher or something there, or
No.
just straight onto the deck. It's quite odd for me.
And then the ones that didn't go over the side, accidentally, they had to be struck down another 4 decks down into the magazine because they were quite valuable, very heavy but good quality brass.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And then this is the net for catching the empty cases to stop them going back here. The captain of the mountain was on that seat there. He could operate this gun from there by the joystick, and he could fire the gun from there if it wasn't being fired by the operations,
which we were
the gun controller
yeah.
down below. So this switch here, you can put it in local or in remote.
Yeah.
If it's in remote, then it's being controlled by the men down in the TS, and the men here are just following the gun. If the power was cut off by action or whatever, it was possible at one time for the aimer and the other guy, the other side, to operate the gun from there. The breech worker here, he could operate this breech. I won't open it right up because there's 2 release catches there,
sure,
which
yeah.
it'll jam it open. But he could actually fire the gun from here as well. So there was various ways. On here is a rev counter, or rounds fired counter. So when you took all the things into consideration, like the weather, the temperature, the barometric pressure and so on, in the calculations, you could actually put the rounds fired into the calculations because the barrel wore over a matter of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, because on tanks we get barrel wear, and eventually you have to change the barrel. I assume it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah. But we used to fire anything up to 90 rounds in a practice session. I think they do it by computer now because they're so expensive, those shells.
Yeah, sure.
You're looking at, I think, about £600 each.
Good Lord.
Going back 30 years ago.
So the amount of the crew there, so you got the loader on that side.
Yep.
You had the gunner.
Yeah, you got the captain of the mountain on here. You got the breech worker, that's 2. You got 2 men there. You got the loader. So you got, and then you got 6 guys there.
Good Lord, so it's a lot of people involved.
Manpower intensive. But the noise when this was going, and we could fire a shell about in surface, you could fire a shell about every just over 3 seconds. In AA, it's slightly slower because you're timing the round.
Okay,
you put the time on it before it's fired.
And talking about the rounds, different types of rounds. I mean, obviously you had high explosives.
Yep.
Armoured piercing. I'm guessing.
Direct action with the old, as soon as it hit the target, on surface target.
Yep.
You got a radar nose fuse, which was for aircraft.
Yep.
The shell would go off when it got within so many yards of the target, and you also had a radar target. It was a shell full of iron filings, and you could fire that up, and when it burst, it created a metal ball. So we could actually use it as a target. The radar could range on it.
Oh, okay.
And we could fire shells at it as though it was a target.
Wow, fantastic.
And then on top of that was B gun was normally the star shell gun, so we could illuminate an enemy ship. We had a shell that was full of phosphorus on a parachute. So you'd fire one of these over the enemy target, and it would come down on a parachute slowly, and you could actually see the outline of the foreign ship. You could range on it. Yeah.
Wow, brilliant. And your actual job was actually up here on this gun?
On here, yeah.
On this particular gun,
yeah.
You were the loader?
I was on that side.
On that side?
Yeah. This is a gun. It's got a range of nine and a half miles maximum.
Wow.
And which is quite a range.
Quite a distance, yeah.
Yeah. And when the gun's in action, we folded the guardrails halfway down, so that when the ship rolled, the barrel never hit the guardrails. So it's quite a. And then the shells came out of that door there from the hoist. They passed through a hole in that door,
Oh yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
And the guys would bring them round here. That door there, they had ready use ammunition there, so that if you were into action before they were able to bring some more ammunition up, it was already on the gun.
Something ready to go immediately.
Yeah. And then in here, the shells were brought in here. The loader stood here, and the guys bringing these over, which were quite heavy. They're full of cordite. He threw them on there. The shell was
Hands to action stations. Primary, main and secondary armament. Hands to action stations. Four, five, close up, clear away. 4-5, closed up, clear away. 4-5, stand 2. 4-5, stood 2. Target, surface contact, range 10,000. Bearing, red, 040. Angle of sight, 30. 4-5, switch to water. 4-5, director, target. 4-5, salvos, A key, fuse, TM. 4-5, salvos, AT, fuse, TM. Low! 4-5, engage. Trainer on. Make interceptor.
You should come back. I didn't even see it. Keep on filming.
It's around at the moment. Oh, it's all okay. I just loud.
Someone's egg. Oh, the egg.
Oh, there's more explosive.
The sulfur smells.
Well, here we are on the squid deck. There are two mountings of 3 barrels each. They fire 6 bombs over the front of the ship. They're fired from the TAS room, ASICS room up in the ops room.
Yep.
And they land in just ahead of the ship, probably quarter of a mile, half a mile. They land in a diamond pattern and at different depths. So they surround the submarine, as it were, and crush it. That's the theory, anyway.
I find it quite amazing that you say they were fired over the ship. I mean,
Well, yeah, it wasn't unusual for if they had a weak charge for one of the bombs to drop near the ship, just ahead of the ship, which was it was quite a bit of a worry sometimes. But I don't think we actually had any hit the ship, luckily. The charge was put in from that side of the barrel at the bottom there, it's like a brass cartridge. Yeah. This wheel here brought the whole thing over to horizontal. The trolley was, the bombs came out here onto the trolley. It was swiveled round and locked up. It was then pushed round here, lined up with the barrel. There are stops down there so that it wouldn't go too far. Line up with the barrel, push the bomb tail first in, and then the whole thing would be brought up. This would be happening both sides. And then you're ready to go.
and these are big, aren't they?
A lot of explosive there. I think about 300 pounds in each one, so that's a lot of explosives.
That is a lot of explosives.
I wouldn't want to be on a submarine when that when that landed anyway. And then down there, that hatch there, that is where the crew, at the sound of action stations, the crew would come up through there, ready to man the weapons.
And crew-wise, we had on the squid deck?
There was about 4 on each side, plus probably the petty officer who was in charge. Yeah. And over here, we've got the conning position, the emergency conning position. In the event that the bridge was hit, then the ship could be steered and conned from here. So you've got your compasses here, and they could control the rudder from here by sound of, they'd have a queue of men, a chain of men going down aft, and they would pass the instructions word of mouth down to steer.
That's incredible.
And up here, you got the Sea-Cat missile. That was developed in the late 1950s to the early 60s. Very effective weapon in its day. It was controlled by joystick and by eye from that tower up there.
And that controller up there, I mean, he's got no cover whatsoever. He's stuck up on the top there, no protection.
No armour at all. Nowhere on the ship where there was any armour on a destroyer. The missiles had about a 5-mile range. It's what they call close range weapon. Very effective. The warhead was a load of scrap metal, basically. And it would go off in front of the target, and the scrap was thrown at the plane, basically, very basically, and tear the plane to pieces. Or that's the theory, once again. Yeah. But yeah, very effective. Yeah.
Forward Seaman's Mess. This was home from home. This is where a good part of the crew would have had their stuff and slept and eaten, and well, it would have been pretty cramped, all those people in here.
To be honest with you, Dan, obviously having to be in an ex-tanky and working in a turret most of the time, I think this is pretty spacious.
Yeah, but you're used to inhuman levels of crowding. I mean, there would have been a lot of guys in here, and in heavy weather, you'd have been crashing over these massive waves, being thrown around. It would have been extraordinary. And actually, everyone would have been in hammocks, weren't they? These bunks weren't put in until the 60s, so they've all been swinging around the roof at night.
Yeah, I mean, there were 47 guys there, which is like you say about the bunks, but quite interestingly, we found this one here. One of these bunks can actually be turned into a little bed as well, so a little seat here, take off the cover, and you open it up, and admittedly, not a lot of width in there, but it's looks like quite a comfy bed.
You'd have been all right there, but I think people would have been on the floor as well. But and during the day, these would have been stowed away. They'd have been tightly wrapped up, packed, and bound and put in this containment area here. And that's not just for sort of naval discipline to make everything look nice. That is also because if, in the event of a terrible damage being done to the ship, a hole being punched through the ship's side, these hammocks would actually be used to block up the hole. So they had their uses.
And another, perhaps much sadder use for these hammocks, of course, is when the seamen died. They'd be put in the hammocks, closed up, the whole thing would be sewn up with the final stitch going through the poor guy's nose.
Through the nose, you could be sure that he was actually dead. And then they were tossed. They were still buried at sea in the Second World War.
Buried at sea and weighted down with projectiles as well. Yeah.
Amazing. And this is the room where they slept, yes, but you know, they ate in here. They had their games in here.
Yeah, two guys, two of the crew, every single day would be on duty for the galley to bring the food back down to here. So you know, very regimented lifestyle, really.
Very regimented, and what never changed, of course, is ever since the 1650s, every sailor in the British Navy gets a third of a pint of rum a day, which watered down a bit cold grog. That would have kept the spirits up, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I don't think I'd have ever could have eaten on here because if somebody gets sick even at the mere thought of a boat, I just cannot appreciate what it'd been like to be in here, but I'd been fine with the rum.
But people had a lot of kit as well, didn't they? You could see some of the bags around the edge.
Yeah, the suitcase is quite nice. I was saying to you earlier that I'm feeling really old because I was issued one of these in the British Army when I first joined, but 100 pieces of equipment they had in there, so, you know, actually a lot of equipment they carried on board the ship.
And it would all have been checked, inspected every day. Checked and inspected, and if it wasn't right, it would have been checked the next day as well. Discipline held up at all times. But I think the weirdest thing about life aboard these ships is just the uncertainty of what's coming next. And if you look at, there was a story about a destroyer that was anchored off Shetland. They were told the following night they were going to attack a target in a Norwegian field. So you just never knew what was coming.
But surely, Dan, I mean, if you were issued warm kit on board, you know you were off somewhere, you know, up north somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's true. You had the right kit. Except that, of course, there's all the famous saying in the British forces that if you were issued warm weather, like, you know, warm like jumpers and woolen clothing, you're almost certainly heading south.
Yeah,
for the
I haven't
tropics.
experienced that personally. I have to agree with you.